हर कोई बात करता है Gen AI, AI, and we all are using it.
Right. Sometimes I ask questions, right, on what could be done, or I suggested something that this is what I have done, but these are 1, 2, 3 things that we can probably do. Because ultimately, if it is a efficiency game and you are not able to charge those hours, it's impacting your top line and bottom line.
So when these people have joined your teams or in this particular role, what are the 4-5 skill sets?
Willing to learn, keep yourself updated, right? Geopolitical issues, economic issues. But I think consulting is something where you do different things every time, right? Because if I know the bigger picture, I'm able to add better value.
Those hard skills are required. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Wisdom Whispers with Abhishek Mittal. आज थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट करेंगे, कोशिश करते हैं कुछ अलग नया करने की, right? Today we will be talking about consulting, right? एक इतना बड़ा एरिया है और आजकल तो जो यंग जनरेशन है, they just want to get into consulting because बहुत सारे, I will not say myths, but बहुत सारी इसके साथ चीजें जुड़ी हुई हैं, traveling, long working hours, travel the world, बहुत कुछ, right? So वो भी we will try to address those. And within that consulting, आज हम एक टॉपिक पे बात करेंगे जिसको जब हम बात करते हैं, we talk about marriages and divorces, which is mergers and acquisitions, right? तो आज उसके बारे में भी बात करेंगे. Today we have a guest who is Ankit Gupta. So he has 15 years of corporate experience and he has specialization into mergers and acquisitions. And throughout his career, he has been doing post deal separations and integration work. He's an instrumental engineer, an MBA in finance, and also a CFA charter holder. बहुत कुछ किया है, right? So Ankit, outside of this entire world, जो हमने इतनी सारी बातें करी, so he's a Bollywood enthusiast. He's a Bollywood buff. You can talk about that. And he likes to listen to music and occasionally writes as well. We can थोड़ा सा उनको बोल सकते हैं कि वो क्या लिखते हैं, तो हमसे सुन सकते हैं उसके लिए. A hobby which he wants to pursue going forward as well. So let's welcome Ankit Gupta to the show. Hi Ankit, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thanks for having me and thanks for doing this.
Great, Ankit. So Ankit, आगे बढ़ने से पहले जानना चाहेंगे कि हमने बात करी कि इंजीनियर हो, उसको MBA भी करी है, and then CFA होल्डर भी हो.
Correct.
तो जर्नी कैसी रही आपकी?
Yeah, I think journey goes back a long way, right? I think I'll start with my education, right? Although you introduced me, right? So I'm an instrumentation engineer. But during my MBA days, I've done my MBA in finance, and I got interested into modeling and valuation. Right, that was my forte. I was called a valuation guru during my MBA finance days. So I wanted to pursue that, right? Modeling, valuation. So whatever opportunity gave me the work, right, of doing modeling, valuation, I wanted to get into that. And unfortunately, I graduated or post-graduated at the time of financial meltdown. So there were not many opportunities in this area. So I switched a couple of companies, but I went into investment banking, equity research, right? That kind of role, and that I was interested in. But what I'm more interested in, starting from scratch, right? So building the model from very scratch, building the revenue model, building the valuation model, doing the valuation using different methodologies, right? And that's what I did. So I initiated, I think, around 30 companies during my tenure. But after a point of time, it becomes sort of monotonous. Especially at a junior level, right? Because at junior level, you are maintaining companies, which means updating the models, working on result notes. Although you increase your sector knowledge because the more time you spend, within a particular sector, covering a certain set of companies, you get knowledgeable about the sector. At a more senior level, obviously, you talk to fund managers, you do road shows.
Yeah.
There is a different category altogether, but I was a junior member at that point of time. So it got monotonous for me. I knew I wanted to do something different, something new. So in a way, consulting chose me rather than me choosing consulting. But I have been, as you said, for the last decade or so, I have been sticking with it. So yeah, that has been the journey. It has been an exciting and long journey so far.
What made you stick to this consulting?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, right? So I think consulting, obviously every job is different, right? It requires its own skill sets, its own challenges are there, right? But I think consulting is something where you do different things every time, right? You work with different clients who are facing different problems. They're set up differently, right?
Yes.
So you encounter different problem every time. apart from the depth of services, you need the spread of knowledge as well, right? Apart from domain knowledge, you also need to understand the client problem holistically.
Yes.
Right? And you need to apply your skill set to a different problem every time, right? So just to give an example, if you might be a supply chain specialist, right? You might be a technology specialist, an ERP specialist, right? And you know all about ERP. But you need to apply that skill to different situation every time. Or you need to adopt that skill to different situation every time, right? So that's, I think, what keeps it more interesting. And you keep learning along with every project that you do, or every engagement that you do. So I think that's what made me stick so far.
Okay. During the introduction, we talked about इसके साथ बहुत सारी myths जो है जुड़ी हुई है consulting के साथ, right? So, how can consultants know more about the company than management? That's one of the area which we always talk about. कि अच्छा यार consulting तो कर रहे हैं, जो जिस कंपनी के लिए हम सर्विसेज दे रहे हैं उसको उसके बारे में ज्यादा पता है.
Correct.
How we know more than that and why they should hire us, right?
I think before that, let me also clarify a couple of things. So first of all, I'm doing this in my personal capacity, right? So this has nothing to do with my current, previous, future employers. Secondly, I think we are doing this for more junior team members, right?
Yes.
Who are just starting their career, who want to shift to consulting.
Yes.
So we'll keep it basic, very simple in a cool way.
Absolutely.
And thirdly, we are not experts on everything, right? So we'll share whatever we know. We are still learning. Learning is a lifelong process. So we'll continue that. Now coming to your question, right? I think it's a great question, right? I also hear that all the time from more junior team members, people who are not part of consulting. So I think because people outside consulting may not necessarily understand what goes behind it. So first of all, to clarify, we are not telling the client how to run their business, right? Very, very simply. So if we are working for a auto OEM, we are not telling the client how do they make cars or how do they make better cars, right? We are solving a particular situation. It could be an M&A, it could be turnaround, it could be implementation, right? We're solving that problem. And why we are able to solve it better? Because we have a secondary skill as well, right? So again, going back to my example, we may be a supply chain specialist or a technology specialist, but we can apply that in a merger and acquisition situation. So that's a secondary skill that we carry.
Yes.
Or we can apply that to a turnaround situation, right? Secondly, I think, a company person, he might know 10 or 15 ways of doing certain things, right? But a consultant would probably know 50 or 100 ways of doing the same thing, because the consultant has probably worked with 50 companies, 100 companies in different situations, has seen multiple scenarios. So he or she is able to apply that skill set better than a company. Thirdly, I would say, obviously, if you are part of an organization, you have your day-to-day responsibilities, right? You are not free to take up additional work of a turnaround, of an M&A, of an implementation, right? So they are not a specialist in that, and they don't have the bandwidth to do that. They might not have the right tools, right? Because ultimately, it's again not their job. Fourthly, I think, the situation for which they're hiring the consultant, that situation might come for a company once in a decade or maybe once in a lifetime. They are not into business of doing mergers, right?
Yes.
They may do a large transformative mergers once in a decade or once in a lifetime. They might do a turnaround. They might do a route optimization once in a while, right? So again, they are not supposed to know that stuff deeply. And I think lastly and most important, sometimes to solve an issue, you need to take a disproportionate view, right? Dispassionate view, and take a couple of steps back and then look at the issue, right? Because the company's management, company people are so involved with the company, right? They're passionately attached to their work that they're not able to see the problem dispassionately. And you can only solve it once you see it objectively and then apply your skills to it, right? And I think that's why they hire consultant, and that's why we come in.
When I look back, I do see, because I also moved into corporate M&A teams, right? So then I understand, because when you talk to these people, they are so passionate about what they are doing.
Right.
They will not look for an issue or a challenge there. सब कुछ ठीक चल रहा है यार. ऐसे ही होता है काम.
Exactly.
So because you have a love with that.
Absolutely.
Because जो आप कर रहे हो,
you have built that, right? And especially you talked about divorces, which is divestment or separations, right? It's not easy to let go any part of your business, irrespective of the rationale behind it, or if it's not doing well, or it's not your focus area, right? You are attached to the business, so you may not be able to cut the cord correctly. And in the integration scenario, there are a lot of cultural differences, right? Policies, procedures, processes. So we are all attached to what we have built over the years or what we have seen over the years, right? And that's why you need someone with an outside view to solve that problem for you.
You have not started your career as consultant, as you said, आई बैंकर थे एंड देन मूव्ड इनटू कंसल्टिंग. जब कंसल्टिंग में मूव किया, सो व्हाट वाज द एक्सपेक्टेशन फ्रॉम यू? बिकॉज आई अंडरस्टैंड जब आपने मर्जर्स एंड एक्विजिशंस ज्वाइन किया तब ये बहुत ही निश एरिया था और डेवलप हो रहा था, कुछ था नहीं मार्केट में,
बिल्कुल
राइट? एंड स्पेसिफिकली आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट इंडियन मार्केट, राइट? तो कुछ अवेलेबल नहीं थी स्किल सेट. तो आपसे क्या एक्सपेक्टेशंस थी जब, और अब कोई उस रोल के लिए ज्वाइन करता है तो अब क्या एक्सपेक्टेशंस होती हैं उनकी?
Sure. I think I'll just first talk about the evolution of consulting, right? Why did we not have this skill set in India 10 years back and maybe globally 15 or 20 years back, right? So I think, first of all, M&A consulting did not exist a few decades back at all, right? Because first of all, there were probably not those transformative M&As. Plus, companies thought that, they can probably take care of that themselves.
Tata Chorus, right?
Right.
Yes, so many,
right? So I think, obviously, but after a point of time, when the deal started failing, not in terms of deal not taking place, but not getting the value that they started with, right? The objective was to obtain certain value, be it in separation or integration scenario. They were not able to deliver that value, right? So companies started to recognize a gap where they thought that, they would do better with an external help. On the other hand, the existing consulting firms, right? They were not into M&A consulting. They also saw that white space and started to entering into this space based on their strengths. For example, all the audit firms, right? All the audit firms, they were very good at, financial analysis, accounting. So they started to get into FDDs because that was sort of an extension of the services that they were already providing.
The FDD is financial due diligence.
Financial due diligence. Right? It's similar to, it requires the same skill set which you required for an audit.
Yes.
Similarly, the strategy firms who were doing this overall strategy, maybe transformation, performance improvement, right? They started to get into M&A strategy and commercial due diligence because that was an extension of their skill set. Plus the companies which were strong in a functional area, for example, technology implementation, right? Accentures of the world, they started to get into, again, functional M&A areas, right? So again, everyone found their own spaces. And as it matured, the industry matured, again, they ventured out into everything. Now everyone is doing or trying to do almost everything. And that comes with the maturity of the industry, maturity of the people, the capabilities, the overlaps, etc., right? So that's where it started. But you're right, when we joined back almost 10 years back, none of it existed, right?
Yes.
Especially in India.
Yeah.
Right? Because it started with developed markets where you had the pricing power. Companies are more open to having consultants. And when we joined, we did not have any help almost, right? There were no trainings. There were no managers who could
job
teach
to
us.
Diya, seekh lo.
Exactly. So we learned on the job, right? But I think one of the benefits was that since it was very new for everyone, the expectations were low, right? And it was easy to meet those expectations and easier to add value.
Right.
And here I would just probably, diverge into a separate topic since we are doing this for junior people on how they can still add value. And this is just coming from my experience because how I was able to exceed expectation, how I was able to add value, and how I was able to differentiate from my peers at that point of time, right? Suppose a new person has joined, or a person who was a fresher, or someone who has joined with 2 to 3 years of experience.
They want to change industry.
They want to change, right? And they have just joined consulting, right? The initial work that they would expect to do will be basic, right? So they would work on company profiles, industry decks, basic data analysis, or small part of a big methodology, big deliverable, whatever, right? So typically, persons who are coming, right, people who are joining the firm, they try to impress, obviously, their bosses and the client by focusing on the process, on how do I create this better, right? How do I bring out the insights? That is good, right? You still get the good feedback. But they don't look at the overall picture, the big picture, right? What is the deal? What stage of deal we are at? How this small piece, even if it is 1%, is going to add to the bigger picture, right? Because if I know the bigger picture, I'm able to add better value. I'm able to come up with better insights, right? And it accelerates my journey. It accelerates my learning. It expedites my learning. So I think that's something I think I did well, right? To understand the bigger picture, and it expedited my learning. And since there was on-the-job training, it really helped. Second, I would say we don't talk about it very often, but I think email writing, right? Very, very important. I never sent a blank mail. I still see people, across who are sending PFA, please find attached. And you have done the work. I'm not saying that you have not done your work, but how would the person know what you have done? Have you understood it? Specifically in a time if you're not getting a chance to talk to that person, right?
Yes.
If the clients are sitting in US, for example, on a different time zone, or the model is such that you're not talking to them on a daily basis, how do you show your value add, right? You write that in a mail. It's the first interface that you're delivering, right? So what I used to do, either I could comment, right, that this is what I have done. This is the observation that I have based on the data or whatever. Sometimes I ask questions, right, on what could be done, or I suggested something that this is what I have done, but these are 1, 2, 3 things that we can probably do, right? So you can make comments, you can ask for suggestions, you can give suggestions, you can write next steps, you can probably think about certain insights which are not asked from you, but still you can always provide that insight, right? In the most basic of work. So I think that's something that I still do. And I think it's appreciated. And this is something that everyone, irrespective of the job they are in, this is not consulting related, right?
Yeah.
Anyone who is sending the deliverables on mail, I believe should exercise this. It improves your thought process. It improves your communication as well. So yeah, I think these are the 2 tips that I would like to share.
Lovely. So we have talked about that what you have done and how you have evolved your role over the years. But जब आज कोई ज्वाइन करता है तो आपकी उनसे क्या expectations होती हैं? What are the 2-3 things you look into those people?
Right. I think the world has changed, right?
Yes, बिल्कुल.
It's more mature. Yeah. That's why it's more structured.
Yes.
And that's why the expectations are more, right? So the world is more demanding, more unforgiving, right? And right now you have resources available, because that when we joined, we did not have resources.
Yeah.
So there are external courses that people can do. There are trainings that people can do, right? So I think there are expectations that people do not come with a blank slate, right? They need to come up with something more. They need to start with some value addition. They should hit the ground running, right? So the expectation is that you understand the role, right? That you don't ask on first day what I'm supposed to do, right? So you go through the JD, obviously you'll go through the interview process, ask those questions in the interview process so that you're more clear. Talk to people, right? Connect with them on LinkedIn or other ways and try to understand the requirement of the role. Secondly, I think technology has become pervasive, right? So the expectation is that anyone who is coming new, they're technologically sound, because right now with the maturity, the data analysis has increased and Excel and PowerPoints are no longer sufficient. So you need the knowledge of whatever tools, right? Alteryx, Power BI, Power Apps, increasingly Gen AI. So the expectation is that you are very sound technically. And then obviously, the more you bring to the table, the better it is. So if you are following a sector, you understand the sector trends, competitive landscape, that is even better. But there are some minimum expectations, whoever is joining the firm, because again of the maturity and the pool that is available right now with the right skill sets.
Okay. And if we have to take it further, so when these people have joined your teams or in this particular role, what are the 4-5 skill set they should keep focusing on so that they can grow as an individual?
Right.
Because har ek role different hai. And absolutely har role mein requirements are different, and the learning curve is different for every people as well. But there are 4-5 things which we really look into. One, I know, attitude. राइट हम हर बार बात करते हैं कि एटीट्यूड है तो आप कुछ भी कर सकते हो. इवन इफ यू हैव एटीट्यूड एंड you listen to it, then you are able to do it. But what according to you are the
no, I think
aspects?
First one, very, very basic, you covered it. If you are willing to learn, you can learn, right?
Yes.
If you know, I know things, so the first step to learning is accepting that I don't know and I want to learn further, right? So you are willing to learn, you are able to put efforts, you will be able to learn anything, right? If you are smart enough. But I think apart from that, first of all, domain knowledge, right? So in consulting, obviously, you come with certain basic skill set, which we talked about. But over a period of time, maybe first 6 months or 12 months, focus on the job. Focus on the very basics, I would say. Don't try to get ahead of yourself or ahead of the game, right? Learn the rules of the engagement, rules of the game. Again, for post-merger kind of role, understanding the business model is very important, right? So how a company operates, how do goods move, how does money move, what is the interplay between them, right? So focus on the internal workings of a company. That is very, very important, right? Keep yourself updated, right? Geopolitical issues, economic issues, because deals do happen due to these issues, right? What is going on externally Obviously, internal factors also come into play, but deals do not happen in isolation. They happen because of everything which is going around in the world, right? So keep yourself updated on that. Then obviously your domain knowledge is very important. If you are a specialist, for example, an IT specialist or a supply chain specialist or an F&A specialist, you need to know your stuff, right? You need to know your work.
Those hard skills are required.
Hard skills are required. And you will grow. The more work that you do, the better you become.
Yeah.
So these are some of the domain knowledge skills that you absolutely need. And then obviously over a period of time, as you said, the soft skills, right? So how do you present your findings or insights, both written as well as orally, right? How do you manage a team? How do you work in a team environment? How do you work with different personality types, different clients, right? Who are maybe demanding, maybe very easy to work with. So soft skills are also very important as you grow in your role.
Great. Thanks, Ankit. Ankit, next topic, I think मेरे बहुत near है. There is recently a lot of articles, lot of things which are talking about and mushrooming of GCCs in India, right? GCCs, Global Capability Centers, and all these large organizations, consulting firms, iBanks and whatnot, right? All the tech firms and everyone has mushrooming a lot of GCCs in India.
Correct.
And they are different from Indian practice of the consulting firms.
Right.
GCCs ke saath, the good part is that that you can travel to globally, right? Indian consulting firms के साथ होता है कि आप इंडिया में ही travel कर सकते हो. There is a limitation, right? Because they have the Indian clients.
Correct.
Or majorly they might have an Asia Pacific clients and where the larger project and you might be able to travel.
Correct.
But with GCCs, you can travel the globe and look at different perspectives of a deal because you can look at the larger deals, larger projects. Indian market still very small.
Absolutely.
Right? So हम कंपेयर नहीं कर सकते वहाँ की कंपनीज को अपनी कंपनीज के साथ. So उनके businesses बहुत broad है, बहुत global है. What's your take on GCCs and Indian consulting firms?
Sure. GCCs I think are expanding quite well, not only in consulting, but I would say everywhere, right?
Yes.
Every day you read a newspaper that they have leased out office space in different cities, right? So yeah, it's something which is picking up quite well for corporates as well as for consulting, right? Everyone is building out their GCC, and India is the where you have the right talent, right pool, and that's why everyone is setting up their GCCs in India. So I think you touched upon a couple of points, right? That first of all, the clients are different.
Yes.
For India firms, you're majorly working with Indian clients, and for GCCs, you are primarily focusing on global clients. There are exceptions, but majority, right? It's how it is. Secondly, I would say, travel again, you covered. Third thing I would say is, the maturity of services. Because of the larger deals, the larger wallet share probably. In GCC roles, if you are especially focusing on developed markets, right, likes of US, UK, some of the European countries, some of the Asia Pacific countries, these markets are very, very mature, right? And consultants are able to get good value for the services that they provide. And that's why the team size as well as maturity is quite big, right?
Good
quite
point.
large. So you are probably ahead of the game in terms of maturity of the services, in terms of the knowing certain things which are still coming to emerging markets, right? Secondly, I would say about tools or technology. Again, you have global budgets, but first the technology is deployed where there is a market value, where the clients are willing to pay for the technology. So you're working on global tools, development as well as usage. So you learn new technology faster, maybe, so on and so forth. Third, I would say, is the difference in growth or the levels, right? So again, as per my understanding, in India firms, you have flatter hierarchy and you spend lesser time at a particular level.
Yes.
So there is a faster path to a partner or a managing director, depending on whatever, the firm uses the nomenclature. In the GCCs, obviously, you spend slightly more time, which is fine, and part to partner is slightly longer. Normally, again, there are exceptions. So I think these are some of the changes, and my answer obviously would have been very different had you asked it 10 years back, because the GCCs are not mature, right?
Yes.
We were just starting a very basic work, so on and so forth. Right now, and I'm talking about all GCCs, right? They are extension of the global teams. Very, very simple, right? So there is no difference between the work that the GCC does versus what people globally do. And I think COVID has a lot to do with this. Obviously we all face challenges during COVID, but I think during COVID nobody was traveling to client sites, right?
Yes.
So clients were more open to having global teams on their projects, irrespective of the geographical location.
Mhm.
If you are able to add value, you could be part of the teams, right?
Yeah.
I think that has accelerated this seamless transition between the global teams and GCC. And these days, most GCC, as I said, are extension of their global offices and doing the same amount of work. So I think both obviously have their own pros and cons, right? So whatever works for you, whatever floats your boat, choose that. I think the work is more or less pretty good in both, right? Compensation again is good. So whatever ticks more boxes
Consulting ticks
you're able to tick.
लगाने हैं, लगा लो.
Exactly. So जो भी works for you, choose that. And I think the change is also not that infrequent, right? We have seen people transferring from India practice offices to global practices offices, GCCs to India practice. So between these three, I think the changes are pretty frequent these days.
And I think when you work with the global organizations, they're open for these changes.
Exactly.
क्योंकि उनके लिए ये restrictions नहीं है कि अच्छा आप इस role के लिए hire हुए थे, आपको यही करना है. If you have matured enough and you want to grow, there's a number of opportunities which are there, and companies are very open to take you. And I know a lot of my friends who have started their career with GCCs or IT software development. Right. They are also GCCs, right?
Yeah.
कुछ भी उनको भी नाम देना है तो we call it back-end software development, but they all are GCCs. Right? तो वो सब move हो गए हैं. तो कोई कहीं है, कोई किसी country में है, कोई कहीं है, and they all moved within the organization. And it's easy.
True.
So a good career option for everyone, right? GCCs or even Indian consulting firms. I think one last question for this segment, which I think you already touched on that. कि एक skill set which is required is you need to understand the technology better, right? And हम आजकल जो हर कोई बात करता है Gen AI, and we all are using it.
Right.
We cannot work कि अच्छा मुझे नहीं आता और मैं सीखूंगा नहीं.
Correct.
तो वो नहीं चलेगा. तो how you look up to these technologies in your work and how you manage this?
Sure. So obviously, no podcast or no discussion can happen without Gen AI, and not because it's a buzzword. It's no longer a buzzword.
Yes.
It's a reality which is hitting all of us, and we need to be ready for that, right? So I think very, very important. And I think it will impact different use cases differently, right? For some use cases, it might bring in efficiency. So especially in data, in digestion, in research insights, it will lower the cost or the time spent, right? For the same insights that you get. So there are multiple use cases in this area. For certain use cases, it might not reduce the time, but it will improve the insights that you're able to generate. So better outcomes, better deliverables, right? For some use cases, it will do both. And I think as we move along, as the technology matures, you'll find new use cases as well, which are not existing right now. Totally something new will emerge, right? I think especially in consulting, obviously everyone is working on incorporating or embedding Gen AI within the deliverables. But I think there will be a tipping point when the adoption will increase. That will be when the consulting firms or other firms, right, which especially work on the hourly model, they're able to figure out the pricing. Because ultimately, if it is a efficiency game and you are not able to charge those hours, right, and you're passing all the benefits to the client, it's impacting your top line and bottom line.
Yeah.
So either you do the bundled costing, fixed costing, or try to find the pricing in your work products. So I think once all the firms are able to do that, then the growth will be exponential and it will be everywhere.
Okay, great. So I think that's important to know that because you cannot be ignorant of these technologies. Simple term में बोलूँगा कि भाई ऐसा नहीं है क्योंकि Google is also AI.
Yeah.
और वो हम कितने सालों से use कर रहे हैं, and it is now embedded into our lives.
Right.
And soon ChatGPT, Gemini, or similar tools and technologies which every company is working on will become a part and parcel of our life. We cannot distract ourselves कि अच्छा नहीं यार हमें नहीं आता, हम नहीं use करेंगे.
And we'll get used to it, right? All the new phones which are coming, they have an element of Gen AI, right?
Yes.
And it's so easy to use. And Google, obviously, it's probably very basic AI, right?
Yeah.
But you still need to click on multiple links to get the information. If someone can summarize that for you in a very easy to read manner, and it's a conversational way of doing things. And apart from these models, obviously, each company is investing in their own LLMs.
Yes.
large language models coming up with their own insight with the internal data that they have, proprietary data that they have. It will all increase going forward.
So Ankit, before we close this, if you have anything which you want to share with our audience, please feel free to do that.
Sure.
Otherwise, we will close this segment and we'll move to another segment.
Sure. I think we touched upon, most of the points. I think one point which we touched upon, but I would probably want to emphasize more on is communication, right? So I think, as I said, I gave certain tips around written communication. But I think what all of us need to realize that when it comes to communication, less is more, right? So you don't need to write long sentences, wordy sentences using difficult words to communicate your message. So articulation is very, very important, right? And here I would just share a small incident with somewhere I read. So Winston Churchill, right? The past Prime Minister of UK, he was a very big author as well. So he wrote a letter to his friend and he started the letter with apologies that I'm writing a long letter because I did not have enough time to write a shorter letter, right? Because if you want to write short, you need to be confident of what you're saying, right? You need to know the stuff. If you can summarize it in very simple words, in a very brief manner, you can only do that if you are knowledgeable, if you know your stuff. Otherwise, you will go round and round in these circles and try to explain it with more words, with lengthier sentences, using difficult words, which is not required, right? So both in your presentations as well as in your written communication, if you're able to communicate, pass across your message in the simplest of words, in the shortest of manner, I think that's what matters. And the second would be according to your audience, right? So choose your language based on the audience. If it's a broader audience, obviously choose even more simpler words, which everyone understands. If it's very specific, a domain expert you're talking to, you can still use certain acronyms or industry words. But yeah, choose your communication according to your audience. So I think
Thank you. Thanks for emphasizing on this. We already had 2 episodes, one with an editorial person and one was with an author. And they both talked about simplicity in the writing is so much required. किसी को डिक्शनरी खोल के देखना पड़ रहा है तो वो वहीं पर किल हो गया है, राइट? क्योंकि किसी के पास टाइम नहीं है उस वर्ड के लिए जाके गूगल करना कि भाई तुमने लिखा क्या है, राइट? So simplicity is so much required. Summarization is so much required. Write crisp sentences. So guys, please focus on that. Don't think that everyone would like to hear those fancy words from you. So let's write crisp, clear sentences. So thanks Ankit.
Thank you.
I think this is a good discussion for the first section. Now with this, we can move to the next section.
Sure.
Which is now beyond the boundaries of this discussion.
Sure.
And we'll talk more about that. Who is Ankit Gupta? शुरू में हमने कुछ चीजें सुनी थी तो हम उसके बारे में और डिटेल्स में जानना चाहेंगे आपसे.
Sure.
So in this section, let's start with the first question. Consulting is sometimes it's very tiring, right? So अपने आप को revive करने के लिए, unwind करने के लिए क्या करते हो?
Sure. So I think first of all, switching off is very, very important, right? Irrespective of you are on an easy project, you're on a difficult project, or you're working 6 hours a day, 12 hours a day, switching off is very important. Specifically these days, we are still in hybrid model, right? Earlier, it was very simple. All of us used to go to office. If you're not bringing your work back, you were able to switch off. These days, majority of the time, or as I said, hybrid model. So you're sometimes working from home, sometimes working from office. And if there is always work on your mind, then it becomes very, very difficult, right?
Yeah.
So you need to switch off so that you are also able to perform better the next day, right? Or whenever you're picking up that work. So first of all, that. So in my case, obviously in everyone's case, it might be different. I obviously spend a lot of time with my couple of kids. I play cricket with my son, watch movies. I take a walk with my wife, listen to music a lot. Writing is something which is very relaxing to me.
अभी उस पे आ रहे हैं.
So I think यही सब है, मतलब typical normal stuff, nothing very different from what majority of the people do.
हॉबी की बात करते हैं तो हॉबी पे आते हैं, सीधा राइटिंग पे आते हैं. हमने in the introduction already we talked about कि you want to pursue this going forward, right? And this is an hobby, right? तो और आपने already writing के लिए you have talked so much कि चाहे writing के लिए tips दिए लोगों को. Writing is so important in your life, in your career, in your growth as well.
Yeah.
So writing has played a bigger role in your entire life. So what really you want to do in writing as a hobby?
Yeah, so this writing is very, very different, right?
Yeah.
And I started, I remember when I was in 4th standard, right? So मैंने तब पहली अपनी, so I used to study in Hindi medium school, right? And my Hindi was very good. My Sanskrit was very good. So I started writing poems, right? So जब मैं 4th class में था, मैंने poem लिखना start कर दिया था. And मेरे हिंदी जो टीचर थे उस टाइम पे स्कूल में, he was also my class teacher, right? So when I was good at study, so everyone used to like me. तो उन्होंने देखा कि मैं क्या लिख रहा हूँ, and he was very impressed. He himself used to write poems, right? तो I think वहाँ पे मैं स्कूल में काफी फेमस हो गया था for writing poems in Hindi majorly on every topic, right? मैं elections पे लिखता था जब 99 में comment change हो रही थी, funny poems, you know, all kind of poems I used to write. जब वो हुआ था एक you know aircraft का जब kidnapping हुई थी, I wrote about that. So I used to read newspaper and you know teachers were very impressed कि ये पढ़ता भी है और लिखता भी है. तो आई थिंक उसमें मैं काफी स्कूल में मैं बहुत फेमस था, यू नो कविराज एंड ऑल दैट. बट आई थिंक समहाउ आई लॉस्ट टच, यू नो व्हेन आई
जॉब में ऐसा ही होता है.
उससे पहले आई थिंक कॉलेज में फॉर एग्जांपल, यू नो इन माय इंजीनियरिंग डेज, इन माय एमबीए डेज, आई डिडंट राइट मच. And then obviously job happened, marriage happened, kids happened. So I kind of lost touch. But I think I refound that during COVID. Because especially in the first wave, there was lots of time at hand, right? Deals were not happening. There was hardly any work. We were sitting at home. We were not used to sitting at home. So I think that's why I rekindled this passion. And I started to write about COVID as well, about what's going around, right? And that I think kind of rekindled my passion. And that's something I at least want to pursue going forward. Let's see where it goes.
Great. All the best for that. Thank you, Ankit. Thanks a lot for joining us. A great discussion. I think every one of us will get a lot of insights from that. So thanks a lot again.
Thank you, Abhishek, for having me. And you're doing a great job with this podcast. All the best.
Thank you. So this was our episode with Ankit Gupta, जहाँ हम लोगों ने काफी सारी soft skills and hard skills की बात करी to be successful in a consulting world, right? We talked about that how much listening plays an important role. How much writing plays an important role. Writing means that writing crisp emails, putting up your point very clearly in your presentations, during the conversations, during the meetings, during your like everything, right? So it's very important that this skill is also be honed. In the team culture you'll be working, so you have to be very collaborative when you are working in a team environment. Outside of that, one interesting topic which we touched base is the global capability centers and the Indian consulting firms, Indian office of those consulting firms. So guys, this is a decision of your willingness that kahan kaam karna hai, dono ke pros and cons hai. If you want to know more about it, you can write to us when you are watching this video, so that we can share more ideas with you. So if you have been following us and if you are liking our videos, then please do like, share and subscribe on a YouTube channel. And if you are listening to us on a podcast platform, do follow us, and we'll keep bringing more such conversations where you can get more insights from our leaders who are coming from the industry. So guys, for now, signing off from Wisdom Whispers with Abhishek Mittal. We will be back next week with another fascinating episode. Thank you.